Close your eyes and listen, not to the noise around you, but to the breath within you, the soft rise and fall, the gentle wave of inhale and exhale. It is not just breath. It is life moving through you, a silent rhythm connecting body, mind, and the world beyond. In Buddhism, the breath is more than a function of survival. It is the bridge between life and death, a quiet teacher of impermanence and presence. Tonight we will journey into the subtle wisdom of the breath and what it tells us about living, dying, and awakening gently in between. Imagine now a forest long ago in ancient India. The air is still. A monk sits beneath the Bodhi tree, his legs folded, his hands resting in his lap, eyes half closed. His name is Siddhartha. Though the world would one day call him Buddha, he does not chase thoughts. He does not cling to dreams. He listens to the breath. He watches it come and go like the tide. He observes its nature, arising, fading, neither owned nor controlled. And in that simple, intimate act, he finds the truth that eluded kings and scholars. Everything is impermanent. Everything is in motion. Even life itself. You too are breathing now, gently, silently. And like the Buddha, you may notice that this breath does not belong to you. You do not command it, yet it comes. You do not beg it to leave, yet it fades. It has been with you since the moment you were born, and it will be with you until the moment you die. In between, it keeps you company, never asking for praise, never announcing itself with pride. And if you pay attention, if you sit with it quietly as you're doing now, it may whisper to you the same wisdom it once whispered to the enlightened one. Breath teaches us that everything is fleeting. One moment in, one moment out. A cycle begins and ends. Each breath is a small death, followed by a new beginning. The space between breaths, have you noticed it? That slight pause between the exhale and the inhale, there lies the doorway. Not to fear, not to loss, but to truth. In that space, we are neither living nor dying. We are simply being. It is there that we touch stillness. This stillness is not empty. It is full of knowing. The breath does not panic about what will come next. It does not mourn the breath that passed. It is free of past and future. This is the teaching. Life, like breath, is not ours to grasp. When we hold it too tightly, it slips. When we let it flow, it nourishes. Many fear death because they believe it to be an end. But Buddhism teaches something gentler. It tells us death is not an ending. It is a continuation, a transformation. Just as the exhale gives rise to the inhale, death gives rise to new life. The body fades, but the stream of consciousness continues, shaped by the actions and intentions of a lifetime. This is what we call karma. Not punishment, not reward, but the echo of our choices. Imagine yourself as a candle flame. The wax may melt, the wick may burn down, but the flame can light another, and another, and another still. In this way, you are never truly gone. Your breath, your kindness, your compassion, they ripple into the world. What you think, say, and do in this life shapes not only your path, but the world around you. And so, we return to the breath, not to escape death, but to understand it. Each breath in is a reminder, I am alive. Each breath out is a gentle release, I let go. When the final breath comes, the one we do not inhale again, we do not vanish into darkness. We return to the great flow of all things. The wave returns to the ocean. The Buddha once said, of all footprints, that of the elephant is supreme. Of all meditations, that on death is supreme. He did not mean that we should dwell in sorrow or fear. He meant that when we embrace the truth of death, we live more fully. We waste less time, we love more deeply. We cherish this breath, this moment, this now. Feel the breath again, slow, soft, gentle. You are alive, you are awake, and yet sleep calls to you not as a threat but as a friend. Let this breath cradle you. Let it hold you in the space between wakefulness and dreaming. If thoughts arise, greet them like clouds in a wide sky. Let them float, let them fade. Come back to the breath. And as you drift, remember this, you are not just the body that rises and falls. You are not just the mind that wanders and returns. You are something more, something watching the breath, feeling the silence, resting in awareness. This awareness is untouched by time. It is not born, it does not die. It simply is. In Tibetan Buddhism, they speak of the bardo, the space between death and rebirth, the great in-between. But tonight, as you lie in stillness, you are in your own bardo, between waking and sleeping, between striving and letting go. And in this sacred space you can practice. You can learn to die each night with peace and rise each morning with grace. This is not morbid, this is not sad. This is liberation. The more we learn to die, to let go, to release, to surrender, the more fully we can live. We stop clinging to what fades. We start cherishing what is here. The breath, the silence, the soft rhythm of now. So breathe, just breathe. Let go, you're safe. You are free. The breath will carry you. Let the breath teach you. And if tonight is just sleep, not death, still treat it with reverence. Lay down like a mountain, rest like a flower closing for the night. You are not lost, you are returning to the space before fear, the space before name, the space before clinging. You are listening now, not just to the sound, not just to the voice, but to something deeper. You are listening to presence. And within this still presence lies a truth that moves beneath all of life. Everything changes. All that arises, passes, the leaf unfurls, flourishes, then falls. The river rushes, slows, and disappears into the ocean. The body is born, grows, weakens, and returns to the earth. This is not something to fear. This is not a flaw in the design. In Buddhism, this is the design. The Pali word Anicca, impermanence, is one of the three marks of existence alongside dukkha, suffering, and anatta, not self. It is not just an idea. It is the very structure of how things are. When you begin to see this clearly, not just in thought, but in your bones, something shifts. You stop reaching, you stop clinging. You begin to rest in the river rather than trying to dam its flow. We resist impermanence because we want things to last. We want to preserve beauty, hold on to joy, protect youth, lock our loved ones in time. But even as we try, life continues its gentle process of change. Hair turns gray, skin softens and loosens. Seasons pass, friendships evolve. Even our thoughts do not stay. The anger you once felt, the joy that once lit you up, the doubt, the longing, the hope, all have come and gone like weather. This is not meant to sadden the heart. It is meant to open it. Imagine if nothing changed. Imagine if the pain you felt never softened, if the grief never eased, if the confusion never gave way to clarity. Impermanence is what makes healing possible. It is what allows us to grow, to grieve and then to love again, to fall down and then rise again, to let go of who we were and become something new. The Buddha taught impermanence not as a philosopher, but as a physician who diagnosed suffering and gave us the medicine to heal. And part of that medicine is seeing things clearly, seeing that even death is not a single moment, but part of a process. We're dying all the time, cells ending, breaths passing, identities fading. And in the same way, we are being born again in each instant. You are not the same person who woke up this morning. Not quite. Your thoughts have shifted. Your body has aged, even if only slightly. Your awareness has been shaped by the experiences of the day. Everything is in motion, and yet there is a stillness at the heart of it all, a place from which we can observe without panic. In meditation, we are invited to sit and notice this changing world, breath by breath. A sensation arises, tingling in the hand, an itch on the cheek, a pulsing in the chest, and it passes. A thought forms, perhaps a memory, a worry, a longing, and it too disappears. We watch, we learn. We begin to trust that we don't need to hold on, that the river knows its course. To truly see impermanence is to loosen the grip of fear. We fear death because we imagine it to be a solid wall, a final drop. But in Buddhism, death is more like a wave folding back into the sea. What you are, what you truly are, has never been fixed. It cannot be fixed. You are a process, a stream of consciousness, a flame passing from one candle to the next. When we cling to the illusion of permanence, we suffer. When we bow to the truth of change, we begin to find peace. Even love is impermanent. This may sound painful, but it is also beautiful. Because love changes, it grows. Because it cannot be grasped, it must be cherished. Every hug is temporary, every conversation is once only. Every gaze, every laugh, every tear. Knowing this doesn't rob life of meaning. It fills life with meaning. The cherry blossoms fall, the snow melts. The child grows. Nothing is wasted because everything is precious. A Zen master once held up a cup during a Dharma talk and said, "I love this cup, but I know it's already broken." He did not say this with sorrow. He said it with joy, because knowing the cup would one day break, he appreciated it fully now. He drank from it with gratitude. He cared for it without clinging. He lived in harmony with time, not in battle against it. This way of seeing, this gentle awareness of change, softens us. It makes us kinder. When you know that the person in front of you will not always be there, you listen more closely. When you know that even your own pain will not last forever, you endure it more patiently. When you realize that your anger is not permanent, you hold it more lightly. Everything changes, everything passes, even the darkest night ends. In the Tibetan Book of the Dead, there is a teaching that says the moment of death is the most powerful moment of all, because it is in that moment that the mind is freed from its attachments. But you don't need to wait for death to experience this freedom. You can begin now in this breath by noticing that all things are passing. And you can begin to meet each moment, not with grasping, but with reverence. Think now of your own life. How many versions of you have come and gone? The child who once feared the dark, the teenager who yearned for acceptance, the adult who chased dreams, made mistakes, learned lessons. These are not separate lives. They are petals of the same flower, and each has fallen, and each has nourished the soil for what comes next. You are not fixed, you are not frozen. You are a dance of elements, a constellation of causes and conditions. The mind that hears these words is not the same mind that heard them moments ago. Even the cells of the body are born and die by the millions every second. Life is not something you hold. It is something you ride, something you bow to, something you breathe with. So let yourself be like the tree in autumn. Let go of what is no longer needed. The leaves will fall, the branches will bare, and yet nothing is lost. The roots grow deeper, the silence becomes fuller. And when the spring comes, as it always does, you will bloom again, not in spite of the letting go, but because of it. Impermanence is not something to be solved. It is something to be befriended. And as you become more intimate with it, something else begins to awaken. Not fear, not sorrow, but compassion, because you begin to see that everyone else is changing too. Everyone else is aging. Everyone else is losing, longing, letting go. We are all walking the same path. And though the faces change, the essence remains. A wish to love, a wish to be free, a wish to understand. There is no end to this unfolding. No final chapter, no fixed self to preserve. Just the great wheel turning, the seasons passing, the breath flowing in and out. The more we resist this, the more we suffer. The more we embrace it, the more we wake up, not in a burst of light, but in the quiet realization that everything we need is already here. In this moment, in this breath. In this passing, the breath rises, the breath falls. Thoughts come, thoughts go. Bodies are born, bodies die. And yet something remains. Not a soul in the way the world often speaks of it, but awareness. Knowing the quiet watcher, this is what the Buddha touched beneath the Bodhi tree. Not permanence, but freedom from clinging. Not eternity, but presence. Not a separate self, but a vast interconnected dance of life, death, and becoming. There is a whisper beneath the surface of your mind. It says, I am here. I'm real, I'm separate. And yet, when we turn inward to find this I, we find no one home. Just thoughts, sensations, memories, hopes. Roles not a name we answer to, a face in the mirror. But who is the one who looks out through your eyes? Who is the one who hears these words now? Buddhism invites us not to answer quickly, but to slow down, breathe, and gently investigate this self we assume to be real. We will sit now together in that inquiry, not to destroy the self, not to reject it, but to understand it deeply, until the illusion begins to dissolve like fog beneath the rising sun. The Buddha's teaching of anatta, or not self, is perhaps the most radical and liberating of all. Unlike the body, which is visible and tangible, or the breath, which we can feel rising and falling, the self is harder to grasp. We live our lives believing in a central me that owns, controls, fears, desires, decides. And yet, when we meditate and begin to look, what we find are parts, processes, ever-changing patterns. Feelings arise, thoughts arise, intentions arise, sensations arise, and all of them pass. None of them stay, none of them say, I am you. If you were to remove each layer, first the body, then sensation, then perception, then thoughts and memory, what remains? Not a fixed core, but awareness itself. This is the insight the Buddha uncovered. Not that there is nothing, but that there is no separate thing. What you take to be a solid self is a bundle of conditions, arising in dependence on causes. It is like a rainbow, beautiful, real in appearance, but without substance. Try to grasp it and your hands return empty. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha guides us to contemplate the 5 aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. These are the components of what we call the self. But none of them last, none of them satisfy. None of them are truly me or mine. The body changes, feelings shift, thoughts contradict. The mind can be calm in the morning and stormy by night. We are not the same person hour to hour, and yet we insist on calling it I. This insistence leads to suffering. Because we identify with what changes, we feel destabilized. When the body ages, we suffer. When thoughts darken, we believe we are lost. When others challenge our beliefs, we feel attacked. But if we saw clearly, we would smile instead. We would see the play of conditions, this dance of form and emptiness, and we would rest in the knowing that there was never a fixed me to protect, defend, or lose. Consider this: if a chariot is made of wheels, axles, a frame, and reins, what is the chariot apart from these parts? And if none of the parts are the chariot, then where is it? In the same way, if the self is made of body, mind, memory, and emotion, and none of those are the self, then what is the self? It is a label, a useful convention. But like all conventions, it cannot hold the weight of truth. The disappearance of the self is not the disappearance of the human. It is the softening of illusion. You still feel, you still act. You still love, but you no longer grasp so tightly. You are no longer burdened by the need to define or defend a fixed identity. You become more fluid, more open, more present. Like the sky, you let the clouds pass without trying to possess them. What dies when the self dissolves is not your life. What dies is your fear. Fear of loss, fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of death. All of these rest on the belief in a solid, separate self. But if there is no such self, then what is there to lose? What is there to protect? When the ego relaxes its grip, the world softens. Others become less threatening. The future becomes less heavy. You no longer carry the burden of needing to be someone. This doesn't mean passivity. It means freedom. You still act, but from spaciousness. You still speak, but with awareness. You still feel, but with compassion rather than clinging. The Buddha didn't become less human when he awakened. He became more fully human, untainted by greed, hatred, and delusion. He smiled more. He wept for the suffering of others. But he no longer suffered from the illusion of I. The mind clings to I, like a child clings to a toy. But that toy is cracked. It breaks easily. Every time someone disrespects us, we feel it shatter. Every time something doesn't go our way, we feel it fall apart. And so we build it again and again. But what if you stopped? What if you let the toy rest on the ground and instead looked up at the sky? What if you discovered a selfless awareness that doesn't need to be propped up? The Thai forest monk Ajahn Chah used to hold up a glass and say, "This glass is already broken." He didn't mean it was damaged. He meant that in time it would shatter. Knowing this, he could use it with joy and care. Knowing it would not last, he didn't cling. In the same way, our identities are already fading. The self you thought you were 5 years ago is gone. The one you will be 10 years from now is yet to arise. What remains? Awareness. And this awareness, the Buddha taught, is luminous. It is not cold emptiness. It is warm clarity. Not self is not nihilism. It is the release from the lie of separateness. It is a door into interconnectedness. When the self dissolves, the walls fall. You are no longer behind glass. You are in the river, moving with all things. The breath of the world becomes your breath. The joy of others becomes your joy. Their suffering becomes yours to tend with gentle hands. So how do we practice seeing through the self? We begin with presence. We notice the arising of the I thought. I want, I don't like, I am this. And we pause, we ask, who is speaking? We watch as the thought passes. And in the stillness that follows, we rest. We observe sensations, memories, stories, but we don't identify. We let them move through awareness like birds crossing the sky. In deep meditation, moments come when the self disappears. There is no one meditating. Just breath, just sound, just sensation. And in those moments, a quiet bliss arises. Not the bliss of excitement, but the bliss of relief. The burden has dropped. The pretending has stopped. You are no longer an actor on a stage. You are the space in which the play appears. This space is boundless. It includes everything. And from it flows a natural compassion, because there is no you and other. There is just this, life unfolding, dying, beginning again, and again, and again. Without ownership, without resistance. Like waves in the sea, like stars in the sky. The Buddha did not teach selflessness to confuse. He taught it to free. Free from the prison of me, from the anxiety of comparison, from the constant need to be seen, validated, affirmed. You are not the image in the mirror. You are not the voice in your head. You are not your success, your failure, your name, your age, your story. You are the knowing of all these things, the witnessing, the awareness. And when death comes, and it will come not to a you, but to a set of changing conditions. The body will return to elements. The mind will dissolve like mist. But the awareness that watched, that listened, that loved, that has never been separate. It belongs to no one, yet touches everything. It is not born and it does not die. It flows. To realize not self is not to lose your life. It is to discover it. To awaken from the dream of separation and walk softly into the truth of interbeing. The wind in the trees, the laughter of a child, the fading of pain, the vanishing of I, all of it is sacred, all of it is impermanent, all of it is free. There is a sensation that arises before we even notice it. It's a tension, almost invisible, a holding, a reaching, a leaning forward in the mind. It happens when we want something to stay. It happens when we fear something may go. It is soft at first, a wish, a preference, but then it hardens into a grip. And that grip is what we call attachment. It is the glue that binds our hearts to impermanent things and then asks them to never change. And yet all things do change. So suffering arises not because the world fails us, but because we expect it not to. The Buddha described attachment as the root of suffering. Not because it's wrong to love or to care or to value, but because we do not love wisely. We cling, we demand. We try to hold the wind in our hands, and when it slips through, as it always does, we feel pain, not because we lost the wind, but because we thought it was ours to hold. Consider a flower. It blooms. It is beautiful. You admire it, you smile. But then the next day, a petal falls. The color fades, the stem begins to droop. And if your happiness depended on that flower staying the same, you feel sadness, perhaps even resentment. Yet the flower did nothing wrong. It simply followed its nature. We suffer not because the flower faded, but because we forgot that it would. Attachment appears in subtle forms, not just in our clinging to people or possessions, but in our insistence that things should unfold a certain way, that our plans must succeed, that our loved ones must never leave, that our body must remain young, that our emotions must always feel good. These attachments are quiet demands, placed on a world that never promised to obey. In Buddhist psychology, we see that tanha, thirst or craving, fuels the cycle of suffering. This thirst is not always loud. Sometimes it whispers, a longing for praise, a need to be understood, a quiet hunger for control, masked as careful planning. Even spiritual ambition can become attachment. The desire to be awakened, to feel peace, to escape discomfort. And so we chase, grasp, crave, but the chase never ends. The object shifts, but the thirst remains. To be free does not mean to stop caring. It means to care without clinging, to love without trying to possess, to experience without needing to hold. This is not cold detachment, it is warm presence. The Buddha did not abandon the world. He embraced it with open arms, but without chains. He loved without fear, he helped without pride. He walked through the world like a leaf on the wind, not because he did not feel, but because he had nothing to lose. Attachment brings the illusion of security. It tells us, if I just hold on tightly enough, I will not be hurt. But in truth, clinging brings more pain than release ever could. When we grip the rope of our expectations and life pulls it from the other end, we get rope burns. But if we let go, there is no pain, only space, openness, breath. Imagine standing on the shore watching waves roll in. Each wave is a moment, a joy, a memory, a person, a fear. If you try to grab the wave, it crashes through your fingers. But if you simply watch, it passes with grace. This is the practice, not to suppress the waves, not to deny them, but to let them come, let them go, without needing them to stay. You may wonder, can I live without attachment and still love deeply? The answer in Buddhism is yes, more deeply, because love without attachment is not entangled in fear. It does not say, stay the same or I will suffer. It says, be free and I will walk with you as long as our paths meet. True love is not ownership. It is spacious, it trusts impermanence. It makes no demands. We grieve, yes. Even enlightened beings grieve. The Buddha wept at the passing of loved ones, but he did not suffer. Because he did not resist the truth. He did not say, this should not have happened. He said, this too is part of the way. Grief comes, pain comes, but suffering is born from resistance. When we release resistance, we feel everything, but we are no longer trapped by it. Meditation is a laboratory for this letting go. We sit, thoughts come, we notice them. We don't push them away, but we don't hold them either. A memory arises, a desire, a worry, a hope. We breathe, we watch, we let go. Again and again, we loosen the grip. And in that loosening there is freedom, not dramatic, not ecstatic, but quiet, gentle, like clouds parting slowly to reveal a soft morning sky. In your own life, notice what you cling to. Is it an image of yourself? A story about how life should be? An outcome you're afraid to lose? A person you're afraid to disappoint? Just notice, no judgment. Awareness alone begins the process of release. You don't need to tear away your attachments. You only need to see them clearly, and in that light, they begin to soften. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means loosening the knot around your heart, around your expectations, around your fear. The knot says, this must stay, this must go my way, this must not end. And that tension becomes suffering. But when we loosen, we breathe, we give life space to move, we give others room to be, we give ourselves permission to rest. Even the breath teaches us this. You cannot hold your breath forever. Try and the body protests. It demands release. Letting go is built into your being. The exhale is not a loss. It is a gift. It clears space. It makes room for the next breath, the next moment. Life flows not from clinging, but from surrender. There is beauty in this. Not a tragic beauty, but a luminous one. The beauty of a moment fully lived, fully felt, and then released. The beauty of tears shed without shame, of laughter that needs no reason to stay, of love offered without strings. This is not less life, it is more life, richer, fuller. Because nothing is wasted when we stop clinging. Letting go does not mean erasing, it means allowing. The past remains but no longer binds. The future unfolds but no longer controls. You walk lightly, as if barefoot on the earth, feeling each step but not grasping the ground. You open your hands, and in doing so you find they are already full, not of things, but of presence. When death comes, as it comes to all, it asks only one thing, to let go. And the one who has practiced this in life will not panic in that final breath. They will not clutch or resist. They will smile softly like one stepping into the sea. They will know, I have let go 1,000 times before. This too is just a breath. This too is part of the path. In the letting go, there is a return, not to something, but to what has always been. Spacious awareness, quiet knowing. The ungraspable source from which all things arise and into which all things dissolve. We live as waves, we return to ocean, and in between we flow. There is a silence that follows loss. It does not speak in words, but in spaces, empty chairs, unopened drawers, moments when the hand reaches out and finds nothing there. It is a silence that rings in the chest, long after the world has moved on. This silence is called grief. In Buddhism, grief is not a problem to be fixed, nor an enemy to be resisted. It is part of the path, a sacred unfolding that reveals just how deeply we have loved. To grieve is to bow to impermanence, not with fear, but with tenderness. To feel fully and consciously the ache of letting go. We grieve because we cared. We grieve because something beautiful touched our life and changed us. And in its passing, we are asked to keep walking, not away from it, but with it, like a shadow that walks beside us, reminding us of where we've been. The Buddha did not teach us to transcend grief by avoiding it. He taught us to enter it with mindfulness, with compassion, and with clarity, to see grief not as a weakness, but as a mirror. This mirror reflects the nature of all things, arising, changing, passing. It reflects the truth that nothing we love can stay exactly as it is, and yet the love itself does not die. The form may fade, the voice may fall silent, the body may return to dust, but the love remains, transformed into memory, into gratitude, into the soft ache that lingers in the chest and occasionally fills the eyes with tears. This ache is not a failure, it is a blessing. It means you have felt something real. In Buddhist monasteries, monks are trained to contemplate death daily, not to harden the heart, but to open it. They imagine their loved ones aging, falling ill, passing away. They sit with the thought of their own death, not morbidly, but honestly. Because to remember impermanence is to treasure each breath. To feel the truth of grief is to know that love was real. And knowing this, we hold the present more gently. Grief has many faces. It is not just the sorrow that follows death. It is the quiet mourning of change. The recognition that the past will not return. The realization that even the happiest days slip away like sand between fingers. Grief can come after a move, after a friendship ends, after a chapter closes. Even joy has grief inside it, because while we are smiling, we know this too will pass. Yet Buddhism does not ask us to stop smiling. It asks us to smile with awareness, to live with the understanding that everything we cherish is impermanent, and to cherish it all the more because of that. This is not detachment, it is depth, the ability to hold beauty and transience in the same breath. To say, I love you, and I know you will leave one day, or I will, and still I love you. Still I stay present, still I open my heart. When the Buddha's own son, Rahula, was growing up, he was not shielded from the teachings. He was taught to observe his thoughts, his body, his emotions, to see that nothing he could point to was truly mine. Even love was not a possession. This doesn't make love less powerful, it makes it purer. When we love without trying to own, we love like the sky holds the clouds, gently without attachment, letting them pass, letting them rain, letting them vanish. Grief moves through us in waves. Some are soft, others fierce. At times there is calm. Then suddenly, without warning, the tide rises. A scent, a song, a photograph, and the heart remembers. Buddhism teaches us not to resist these waves, but to witness them, to allow them, to breathe through them without drowning. Mindfulness becomes the boat, compassion becomes the oar, and little by little we learn to ride the current. We do not try to suppress grief, nor do we feed it with stories. We do not say, this should not have happened. We say, this has happened, and we bow. We feel the pain in the chest, the tightness in the throat, the fog in the mind. We hold it all with tenderness. Like a mother holding a crying child, we bring awareness to our sorrow, not to fix it, but to be present with it. This presence itself is healing. Some days the grief feels distant. Other days, it feels sharp again. Buddhism does not offer a straight line to healing. It offers a circle. The seasons return, the feelings revisit. But each time we are a little more open, a little more wise, a little more compassionate with ourselves and others. This is the gentle path, the path of no resistance, the path of being with what is. In Zen, there is a teaching that says, the lotus blooms in the mud. Grief is mud, it is messy, heavy, dark, and yet from it, something exquisite can grow. Compassion, connection, a deeper knowing, a softening of judgment, a greater capacity to sit with others in their sorrow. Because when you have grieved, you no longer look away. You no longer offer empty words. You simply sit, and your presence speaks what words cannot. There is no correct way to grieve. No timetable, no right emotion. Sometimes grief is numbness. Sometimes it is rage. Sometimes it is tears that arrive years later without explanation. Buddhism does not judge the form grief takes. It asks only that we meet it with mindfulness, that we walk with it gently, hand in hand, as with an old companion, that we recognize it not as the enemy of life, but as its quiet teacher. And what does grief teach? It teaches that we are connected, that what happens to one affects all, that we do not live alone, that we do not die alone, that love leaves traces, that even when a body is gone, the heart remembers, the mind replays, the soul feels. We are stitched together not just by presence, but by memory, by meaning, by care. In the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, there's a beautiful practice of tonglen, giving and receiving. When we are in pain, we breathe in the suffering of others. When we feel love, we breathe out that warmth to the world. In grief, this practice transforms sorrow into compassion. We say, may all beings who feel this pain be held, be soothed, be understood. We turn our personal ache into something vast, something selfless, something healing. And so grief, when walked with awareness, becomes a path to awakening. It strips away illusions, it humbles us. It reminds us of what matters. It deepens our presence. We stop wasting time. We speak more kindly. We listen more deeply. We see our shared fragility, and in that, we find our shared strength. The Buddha taught that everything we cling to must change, must fade, must go. He did not teach this to make us despair, but to invite us into intimacy with life. Because only when we stop grasping can we truly hold what is here. Only when we stop resisting loss can we truly taste love. And only when we embrace grief can we be transformed by it. Grief does not end, but it changes. It softens, it becomes part of you, not as a wound, but as a well. A deep, clear space inside you where love once poured and now remains in a different form. Not visible, but no less real. And in that well you can draw up compassion for yourself, for others, for the whole beautiful, impermanent world. There is a quiet strength that grows when the mind no longer argues with life. It doesn't shout, it doesn't fight. It doesn't demand that things be different from how they are. It simply opens. And in that opening, a spaciousness appears, wide enough to hold anything, joy or pain, gain or loss, clarity or confusion. This is the strength of acceptance. Not a giving up, but a gentle bowing down, a willingness to say, yes, this too. The Buddha taught that suffering arises not from what happens, but from our resistance to what happens. A feeling appears and we push it away. A loss comes and we refuse to let go. A future approaches and we tense against it. And so we suffer, not because life is cruel, but because we are unprepared to allow life to be just as it is. To accept what we cannot change is not weakness. It is freedom. It is the door to stillness. Imagine you are standing in a river and the current is strong. You plant your feet, you try to resist, and the water crashes against your body again and again. You tire, you struggle. But what if you stop resisting? What if you turn and float and allow the river to carry you, not away, but deeper into your own heart? This is acceptance, not drowning, not submission, but floating with what already is, being at peace with what is already true. There are moments in life that do not ask for fixing. They ask for presence, a diagnosis, a loss, a change you did not ask for. In those moments, the mind may protest, the heart may break, but beneath that, there is a quiet voice that says, Let this be, not because you want it, not because you enjoy it, but because it is already here. And to fight with what is already here is to turn your own heart into a battlefield. Acceptance does not mean we stop feeling. It means we stop running. We let the emotion rise. We let the grief visit. We allow the fear to knock at the door. But we do not collapse. We do not cling. We do not resist. We simply breathe. We sit, we notice. And in that noticing, something shifts. Not the situation, but the way we hold it. The tightness softens. The mind quiets. And a small, steady voice inside says, this too can be held. Mindfulness is the gateway. It teaches us to be with what is, not with what should be. We notice the breath, not to change it, but to feel it. We feel the body, not to control it, but to honor it. We observe thoughts, not to stop them, but to see them clearly. And in this seeing, we discover that we can rest even when life is uncertain. We can breathe even when nothing makes sense. We can stay even when everything feels like it's leaving. Acceptance does not mean inaction, it means wise response. From stillness, we move when it is time to move. From clarity, we speak when words are needed. But we do not act from fear. We do not react from habit. We wait for the mud to settle. And when the waters are clear, we step forward, not to escape reality, but to live within it fully. Acceptance is not the end of change. It is the beginning of wise change. There are wounds that will not be healed by force, only by gentleness. There are answers that will not come through struggle, only through silence. To accept is to open the hand, to release the grip, to allow what is already true to be seen without fear. And in that space of seeing, a deeper intelligence awakens. Not intellect, not emotion, but wisdom. The knowing that says, this is the path. Not because I chose it, but because it is here. Even in suffering, acceptance brings light. Pain may not vanish, but it becomes cleaner, simpler, less tangled. Instead of, why is this happening to me? We ask, how can I be with this kindly? Instead of, this shouldn't be, we say, this is. Now how do I move with grace? And suddenly the story shifts. We are no longer victims. We are no longer enemies of reality. We become allies of what is. The Buddha taught that the first noble truth is dukkha, there is suffering. The second, that craving causes it. But in the third, he offers release. Freedom is possible. And in the fourth, he offers a path. The path begins not with struggle, but with seeing clearly. And when we see, we stop grasping, we stop denying. We stop clinging to how things used to be or how we believe they must be. We rest just for a moment in what is. And that moment is liberation. Sometimes what is includes uncertainty. Sometimes it includes not knowing. Buddhism does not demand answers. It welcomes questions. And it teaches us to sit with the unknown like an old friend. We do not need to solve everything before we sleep. We do not need to understand everything before we rest. We only need to be present with what is alive in us now. This breath, this heartbeat, this moment of being. Acceptance does not numb us, it softens us. It makes us more able to hold both joy and sorrow without closing our hearts. It gives us permission to be human, not perfect, not always in control, but always capable of presence. And in that presence we remember, this moment is enough, this breath is enough. This feeling, even this one, can be part of the path. Even in the face of death, acceptance is the only path that brings peace. Not because we want to die, but because we know death is part of life. And fighting it only brings fear. To accept death is to honor life more fully, to see every moment as precious, to waste less time, to forgive more quickly, to love more freely, to live without holding back. We do not need to fix our lives before we find peace. We only need to stop pushing away what is already here. This moment right now holds everything we need for awakening. Not tomorrow, not after the plan succeeds, not after the grief fades. Now this moment, as it is, and when we open to it, not reluctantly but with sincerity, we find something quiet at the center. Not happiness, but peace. Not answers, but presence. Not perfection, but truth. We see that life, in all its imperfection, is still holy. And in accepting it, we are not giving up. We are finally arriving. There is a stillness that opens not into emptiness, but into tenderness. It is what arises when you look upon suffering and do not turn away. When you hold your own sorrow with the same care you would offer a dear friend. When you begin to feel that the world is not separate from you, and that every breath, every joy, every ache belongs not just to them or to me, but to all of us, woven into the same fabric of experience. This stillness is called compassion. It is not an emotion that comes and goes. It is a way of seeing. In Buddhist teaching, compassion is the natural response to suffering when the mind is no longer entangled in judgment or fear. When we stop dividing the world into self and other, deserving and undeserving, success and failure, we begin to see more clearly. And what we see is not just impermanence, not just emptiness, but shared humanity, shared fragility, shared beauty. We see that to be alive is to be vulnerable, and in that vulnerability, the heart opens, not with pity, but with deep kinship. The Buddha taught that the practice of karuna, or compassion, is not separate from wisdom. It arises from the same seeing. When we look deeply into the nature of things, we see that everything we grasp for, everything we fear, everything we cherish, is subject to change. And we see that others too are caught in the same cycle, longing for happiness, afraid of pain, grasping, letting go, grieving, hoping, forgetting, remembering. In that moment, the illusion of separation begins to dissolve. To awaken is not to rise above suffering, it is to feel it fully without being broken by it. The awakened mind does not hide from the world. It steps into it barefoot, aware, present. When the heart is free from self-centeredness, compassion flows effortlessly, like a spring from the earth. You do not need to force it. You only need to listen, to open, to stay. Even your own pain becomes the ground for compassion. The aches in your heart, the losses you've carried, the loneliness, the uncertainty, all of it becomes a bridge. Because you have suffered, you know how others feel. Because you have felt confusion, you understand what it means to long for clarity. Because you have grieved, you can sit beside someone in silence and say nothing and still say everything. This is not sentimental, it is fierce in its gentleness. Compassion does not mean fixing. It does not mean absorbing others' pain. It means meeting pain with presence. It means saying, I see you, I'm here. Whether it is your own fear or another's loss, compassion does not push away. It leans in, it breathes, it remains. Sometimes compassion is quiet. It does not always look like action. It can be the soft choice not to judge yourself, the decision to rest instead of striving, the patience to listen fully before speaking. It can be the moment you stop trying to correct someone's grief and simply witness it. It can be the way you forgive your past, knowing it did not know what you now know. In the teachings, the Buddha often sat with the sick, the grieving, the angry, the lost. He did not always speak. Sometimes he simply listened. Sometimes he told a story to remind them that they were not alone. Sometimes he reminded them that all things arise and pass. But most of all, he remained present. He showed them through his stillness what it meant to be held by awareness, not abandoned by it. To cultivate compassion in meditation, the practice is simple. You begin by breathing into your own suffering without resistance. You notice the tightness, the ache, the heat or heaviness. You do not try to make it go away. You simply hold it in the light of your attention. Then you bring to mind someone else, perhaps someone you love or someone who is struggling. You breathe for them too. You say silently, may you be free from suffering. May you be at peace. You let the circle widen. You include those you do not know, even those you dislike, even those who have hurt you, not because they are right, but because they too are caught in their own pain. And as the circle expands, something inside you softens, a warmth, a sense of connection that does not depend on agreement or closeness, just the shared truth of being human. This kind of compassion changes the way we move through the world. We become less reactive, less defensive. We start to see that others' harshness is often rooted in fear, that criticism often hides pain, that cruelty is often the voice of someone disconnected from their own heart. And while we still protect ourselves when needed, we do so with clarity, not hatred. We set boundaries, but not walls. We speak firmly but not cruelly. We care, but we are not consumed. Compassion also includes the earth, the air, the creatures we often forget. We begin to live more gently, not because we were told to, but because we feel the impact of our actions. We feel the aliveness of all things. The bird whose wings stir the wind, the tree whose roots run deep in silence, the sky that asks for nothing and gives everything. Compassion opens us to a larger life, not just human but whole. And in time, as we walk this path, compassion turns inward again, not just for the person we are now, but for every version of ourselves we've ever been. The child who didn't know, the teenager who was lost, the adult who made mistakes, the parts of us that were afraid to feel, afraid to fall, afraid to soften. And we say, I see you. You were doing your best. You deserve kindness too. This is the heart of the Bodhisattva path, the path of one who awakens not for themselves alone, but for all beings. It is not a path of heroic deeds. It is a path of presence, of staying with the world instead of escaping it, of turning towards suffering instead of away, of walking slowly, consciously, knowing that your peace can ripple outward into the lives of those you touch, even silently, even without words. And still, this compassion asks nothing. It does not need to be seen. It does not need to be returned. It is like the sun, shining not for reward, but because that is its nature. When your heart is clear, compassion is what remains. When your mind is still, compassion is what speaks. It does not come from the self. It comes from the space left behind when the self is set down. Even now, as these words move through you, something in you knows this already. Something ancient and quiet, beneath the layers of habit and striving. A still point where you have always been whole. That stillness is not yours or mine, it belongs to everyone. It is what meets the world with open hands. It is what bows to pain and says, I see you. It is what walks beside every being, without needing to lead or follow. It simply walks, and in walking it heals. There comes a point after all the seeking, all the learning, all the subtle grasping for peace, when something within you becomes very quiet. Not from fatigue, but from insight. You begin to see that the path has never been about becoming something. There is a stillness underneath it all, and that stillness is not empty, it is awake. The awakened mind is not a special state reserved for the few. It is not a peak experience. It is not dramatic. It is not outside of you. It is the most ordinary thing, the space in which every moment appears and dissolves. It is the quiet that never argues, the awareness that watches the thoughts rise and fall without becoming them. The ground beneath impermanence, not separate from it but untouched by it. The stillness cannot be owned. You cannot reach it by effort. You can only fall into it by stopping, by not chasing the next thing, by not trying to fix yourself, by resting in what already is. When the mind no longer tries to become, what remains is being. And being in its truest form is awake. This does not mean you stop feeling. You still cry, you still love, you still say goodbye, but something is different. There is space around it all. There is the knowing. This, too, is part of the unfolding. Nothing to hold, nothing to push away. Even death loses its edge, not because it is gone, but because the one who feared it was never solid to begin with. The awakened mind sees life and death as movements in the same field, waves on the surface of a still ocean. The body rises, the breath flows, the heart beats, and then it all begins to quiet. Like dusk falling, like leaves returning to the earth. There is no tragedy in this. Only beauty, only return. What you are was never just the body, never just the name. You are the open space in which name and body appear. This realization does not require a temple. It does not require robes. It does not require a special place or special words. It is as close as the breath, as intimate as this moment. Every time you are fully here, fully present without needing anything to change, you are tasting awakening. Even if just for a moment, that moment is enough. The Buddha did not give us something to believe. He offered a mirror. He pointed not to himself, but to your own heart. He said, "Look here, this is where freedom lives. Not in escape, but in clarity. Not in transcendence, but in full presence. You are already that which you seek, not as a concept, but as the unshakable truth. When fear arises, the awakened mind notices. When sorrow moves through, it allows. When joy blossoms, it smiles, knowing it too will pass. And through it all, the center holds, not because it resists, but because it is no longer caught. There is nothing to defend, nothing to prove, nothing to become. You do not need to chase stillness. You only need to notice what is already still, beneath the thinking, beneath the remembering and projecting. There is this moment, quiet, complete, luminous. And in this moment there is no problem. Even pain, when held in awareness, loses its sharpness. Even confusion, when not resisted, begins to soften. The light of awareness touches everything, not to change it, but to know it. This light is not separate from you, it is you. It is what remains when you no longer try to be someone. It is the openness that watches the breath rise and fall, the thoughts drift and fade, the feelings swell and recede. It does not cling, it does not flee. It is home. When the body grows old, when the breath slows, when the senses dim, the awakened mind remains unshaken. It has seen through the illusion of ownership. It knows the body was borrowed, the mind was a tool, the story was just a chapter. And so, when death comes, it meets it like an old friend, not with fear, but with understanding. You see, death is not the opposite of life. It is part of life. Like night follows day, like winter follows autumn. The awakened mind does not mourn the falling of a leaf as a loss. It sees the return, the giving back, the great rhythm. And in that seeing, there is no clinging, only reverence. This reverence is the natural fragrance of wisdom. It smells like silence, it feels like space. It sees every being as sacred, not because of what they achieve, but because they are. Just as they are, nothing left to prove, nothing left to chase, only the vast openness of now. Even the breath, when watched with presence, becomes a teaching. Each inhale arising, each exhale passing, and in between a pause. That pause is the doorway, the space between one moment and the next. And in that space, the self disappears. There is no I, no mind, no story. Just awareness watching, just life unfolding. The teachings of the Buddha are not instructions. They are invitations, invitations to stop, to look, to remember. You do not need to be anything other than what you are. You do not need to fix what has already passed. You do not need to hold the future in your hands. You only need to rest here, in this breath, in this moment, in this space that holds all things and asks for nothing. This is where the journey always pointed, not to something new, but to what has always been waiting in the quiet corners of your awareness. The part of you that never rushed, that never blamed, that never needed anything but presence. That still point around which all things turn, but which itself does not move. And when you rest there, even for a few breaths, the world softens. The heart opens, the mind quiets, not because it has been silenced, but because it has nothing left to say. It has remembered what words cannot hold. It has remembered the stillness beneath the sound.